Hey, this is Shouh. I've added this demo because I want you to see a drawing that I've worked on from start to finish. I'm drawing the environment outside of my studio space. Now, the reason why I put this drawing together and this demo together, as you see this little ant crawling across, which is super funny. The reason why I put this together is because in the other two drawing exercises, the one where I drew in the studio and in the forest, you got a sense of the montage, and a lot of things are skipped out. And I think this will help a lot, where you really see, of course it's sped up, but you really see my process from start to finish of a drawing. So I'm going to go over two things with the freeform narration. First, I'm going to go through my thinking with this drawing. And second, it's a concept recap for all of the modules that you have learned so far. So this course has 6 modules. I do think that I do learn the best by having concepts continuously emphasized and re-emphasized, told and retold. That's the way that I will best retain the information. On top of going through a reflective model where I am asking myself, what was that unit about? What was that chapter about? What was that lesson about? What was that video about? And what's my takeaway? And how do I apply that to my practice? So this reflective process is very, very critical, and it ensures that you have the best learning outcome. So first, we're going to start with my thinking. This piece, it took about an hour and a half, maybe upwards of 2 hours. And let's talk about the tools. You can scroll all the way back to the very end of the video where I actually zoom out and show you the tools that I use. I use pencils. In particular, they're water-soluble pencils. They're essentially graphite that when you apply water to it, it starts to dilute and you can start to push the medium around. The medium that you see me start with, they're ink, and then also Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pens, they're ink pens. Water brush is awesome. You can fill the water brush with clear water, or you can fill it with ink that already has some value or some darkness to it. So what I mean by value and darkness is you can dilute your ink. And then the other medium that I use is watercolor. In terms of the applicators, you'll see in the very beginning of the drawing, I was using, I don't know the name of these plants, but you can see me holding it in my hand right now. And I was actually drawing with it, this little purple plant. And I think that's what gets the creative process going, so that I don't start very, very tight and intimidated. I'm just about throwing down the marks and being in the moment. Feel free to play the demo and work alongside of me, because I believe we learn the best through osmosis. And wherever you are, it's about that community. And that's why online learning, I believe, is a very powerful and effective tool, because you could be in the comfort of your own home and put on a YouTube video, put on our course, and do art with us. I do this all the time. So when I'm drawing, when I'm working, I like to consume. And I don't like to consume information where it's just entertainment. I believe in order for me to be the best artist that I can be, and this is the same for any field, I would always want to produce more than I consume. And then when I do consume, I'm actually consuming as much as I can, relevant information that's going to be effective to my growth. And so I would put on videos by my favorite artists, and not only watch how they paint, but it's also listening to them talk about their practice. So a few key artists that I always listen to, that I always watch: Nicholas Uribe. He has a YouTube channel called The Art Painted Lives. John Park is an amazing concept artist, digital painter. And then there's also James Jean, who's an amazing illustrator. And by the way, what I'm showing you right here, this is so important to point out. This is only one of the many ways to do it. It doesn't mean that you have to copy exactly my steps. You can be inspired by my work, just like how Julie Meritu and other artists inspires my feeling of my approach to this topic of sensory escape. And when I think about this term, the sensory escape, this is a new term, by the way. I never mentioned this in any previous parts of the course. You think about a landscape. You probably heard of a soundscape too, right? But when I think about this drawing, I approach it with this idea of a sensory escape because I'm trying to really tap into my senses. And I'll talk more about what that actually means in terms of tapping into the senses a little bit later. Now, the general approach that I have here, it's always working from general to specific. Sometimes I work in reverse of that, but more often than not, I'm working from general to specific. I'm just feeling the canvas out, the paper out. I remember this artist, you guys probably have seen his painting, Jackson Pollock. Now, Jackson Pollock's paintings, most people would go to the mall and be like, whatever, I could do it too, and discredit him altogether. But I learned something from him that was super insightful. He talked about how it's him staring at this very massive blank canvas, and it's this opportunity for him to communicate and to dialogue, to engage in a dialogue with the canvas. And I thought, at first when I read it, I was like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you talk to a canvas? But the more I think about it, the more it made sense, because when you're engaging in a dialogue with your canvas, with your paper, with your mediums, with your surrounding, you're not really just talking to them, you're really immersing yourself in the whole process of art creation. Now, I am someone who doesn't retain a lot of information when I learn, but something that I do think about a lot is after I consume the material, I think about what is my one takeaway. And that really simplifies things for me. So the one takeaway that I would love for you to have is that drawing is a very personal journey, especially for you who's working, maybe it's a 9 to 5, you're on the grind, and you're looking for a way to do things that bring you energy, to do things that really replenish, not just energy, but really replenish your humanity and your soul. And that's why this course, I hope it plants a seed in you that I help you understand drawing doesn't have to be about perfection, that it's a personal journey of discovery, and it doesn't have to be hard. And I want you to be completely honest and as honest with yourself as possible with this whole drawing practice. And as long as you're honest, you would get a lot out of this process, I promise you. Now, before I go on to concepts and recapping these concepts that you've learned in different modules, I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about where I'm at with this demo so far. I'd like to preface this by saying you don't need to be so caught up in the exactitude of how these marks are made, how each marks are made on your drawing. Just be in the moment, be in the flow. Now, if you're to ask me, Shouh, why did you use these colors? And why did you choose to use these mediums? Why did you choose to use these marks? I can't pinpoint exactly why, but again, it goes back to that idea of being honest expression of what it is that I take in. And so I think you can see that there is this dance between the abstract and the concrete. And the concrete is formed by the buildings that are directly outside of my studio. So you can see that formulating on the right side that I'm making some straight edges, whereas the rest of the lines that are not straight edges, they're very curvilinear, they're very expressive. That pertains to the senses. Maybe it's that I'm hearing things, that I'm translating those things that I hear into the visual. But it doesn't necessarily always need to be that. It doesn't always need to be one of the 5 senses. Again, it's drawing from the mind's eye. That's the best way that I could put it. Now, in Module 1, Why Draw, and talking about Kim Jong-gi and his secret weapon, what I hope your takeaway is this idea that there's more to drawing than technical proficiency. And I hope I shared with you my story since I was a little kid, that it was very natural for me to hit a certain age where it was all about creating likeness and drawing in a photorealistic way and trying to attain to that goal and making it as good as possible. And the definition of good at that age actually shifts from when you're a little kid and just having fun with marks to when you are getting into your teens. You're probably starting to go, it's not a great idea for me to use colors in this wild and wonderful way. It probably needs to look like the thing that the world is seeing, that objectively the world says it, whatever it looks like. And so I'm showing you Kim Jung-gi and his story. Kim Jung-gi, of course, is a master at his draftsmanship. He's a master of anatomy of perspective. But the point that I'm trying to make here is we should learn to establish a personal connection with the subjects, just like how Kim Jung-gi spends all of his waking moments, even if he's not drawing, he's still doing his best to study the nooks and the crannies and the nuances of the world around him. So this module serves to help you differentiate the difference between looking and seeing and copying versus inferring. And that's such a fundamentally important concept for you to begin grasping. That you're going from taking an image and just copying it to I'm looking at the real thing. I'm experiencing the world and I'm inferring from this experience and then outputting that information onto my sheet of paper, onto my art form. Or if you're a maker, then it's whatever you make with your hands. Module number 2, let's rediscover the world, enhancing artistic perception through engaging with the senses. Now, I talked about this experience when I was in New York, the drawing of the brownstone versus Tommy Jazz. This difference in the brownstone, I still love that drawing, don't get me wrong, but I remember that experience being it was high stress because I wanted to get all the architectural details correct versus Tommy Jazz drawing. I was getting into that flow state and I was drawing by being authentic and learning to draw by truly expressing what it is that I was feeling. It was like the music was pumping through my veins. And I just thoroughly remember that experience to be the epitome, the height, the meaning of what it is to be alive. And by the way, this doesn't mean that you have to go somewhere super special or hop on a plane to go somewhere else, even though that is awesome. It's one of the best ways for you to rejuvenate your creativity as a human being. But what I'm trying to say is we can develop abilities and ways and methods and perspectives to turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. And the core, again, of engaging with the senses, it just means that you're heightening your awareness of the surroundings. So again, that night at Tommy Jazz, it wasn't like I was really actively thinking about, ooh, music, this note comes through, this note needs to be translated to this thing, right? It was just like the music was coming through and I was just directing it and directly outpouring that feeling onto my sheet of paper. So it's really this idea that you're heightening your awareness of your surroundings and trying your best to translate as authentically those feelings to the marks, to your drawing and to your painting as much as possible. So for the 2 assignments, there are 2 assignments that you did in Module 2. One is for studying the object of your choosing for as long as you can, and then close the book and draw it. The other is drawing the familiar place versus the unfamiliar place. Their introduction to you not only heightening your observational skills, right? The first drawing is you're studying it for a prolonged period of time, as long as it takes, right? It may be a test of memory. And I'll tell you right now, I have the worst memory ever. But it's also to activate a part of your brain where you're literally drawing out things. Like what I mean by drawing out is like extracting, right? It's bringing out things, sights, experiences that you have stored. And you have to remember that you are a repository of experiences that you can pull from. You have a wealth of experiences and memories that you can pull from. So whenever you feel like you're stuck, try to go back to the idea that you're a human being. You spend all these hundreds of thousands of hours on Earth. There is something that is uniquely you that you can bring about onto your creation, be it that is a drawing, a painting, sculpture, installation, whatever it is that's your form that you want to try out. And this exercise teaches you, these exercises teach you to get a bit more comfortable with drawing without a photo reference. Module number 3 is about history. And with all the other courses that you'll be taking at Youngkin's Academy, we will do our best to put in history, put in precedents, put in artists that have come before us, designers, creators that have come before us. Because why? Because we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. And one of the best ways to learn is to learn from these giants. Fear is present in all of us, but how did these giants, these artists, these creators break free from the fear and create wonderful works of art that we see now? Again, I think that's one of the best ways for us to learn. You know, we all try to think of ways to get something done. And it's very common for a beginner to do things in a bubble, to try to figure things out and feel like, oh, there's something amazing about figuring things out for yourself. And I do agree with that 100%. But at the same time, then you're creating a bubble, you're creating a vacuum. And we'll love for you to engage with this idea of not only are you going to be able to learn from these artists, but you'll be able to actually absorb their knowledge. It's like you're living vicariously through them. You take in their wealth of experiences and you try to incorporate, have them inform you of your artistic practice. And that way, you don't have to worry about, oh, but that means I'm going to copy other people's ideas, and that means I can't find my own originality. I genuinely believe that it's so difficult to create anything that is original anymore. And it's actually more meaningful for you to understand these two concepts. First, you are unique. There's no other person like you on this earth. You have your own wealth of experiences, books that you've read. And also second, I do think that when you start studying, learning, understanding other people's, other artists, their missions, their methods, that is going to help you understand why you do work the way you do. That's going to help you raise questions and ask, oh, that's interesting. That's a cool perspective. And whether intentional or not, you'll learn to adjust and adapt. And ultimately, your vision as an artist, as a creator, becomes even clearer. So in this module, I've talked about my favorite artists. I have a bunch of them. I'm going to keep saying that, favorite artists, favorite artists. We have talked about Alberto Giacometti, Cy Twombly, and also Julie Mertu. And when you think about an artist like Cy Twombly, it just takes so much courage to be like him, right? To create these paintings where if you were to do that, you'd probably think, oh, I'm going to get laughed at. I'm not a true artist. And yet he is one of the most celebrated modern artists of all time. And this whole module, the takeaway, I really do hope that is you can see that there's so many different ways to draw, and a fundamental key to being expressive is to ask yourself, again, if the way that you draw is coming from a place of honesty, that it's the way that you want to draw. I think that will take you very, very far, that you're not trying to just copy everyone else. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that. I do studies all the time, but ultimately there has to be balance between that and finding the way that you like to do things and just doubling down on that. A little bit of a deeper dive into Julie Mertu. I love her works, and the continued concept that she has is of this exploration of space and time. And Mertu's works delve into the concept of space and time in the way that she's trying to represent the layered nature of these experiences that she's had and essentially their histories. And you can see that her paintings, they are this plethora, they're this combination of the past and the present and the future. And harkening back to and relating back to the painting I'm working on now, you can see that she's a huge influence to me. That when I work on my drawing here, my painting here, it's that confluence, it's that layering of all of these experiences that I'm taking in. As soon as these experiences that I'm taking in, they get transferred, they turn into past tense, right? So I know that sounds a little bit trippy and all, but I hope that Module 3 serves as an inspiration for you to have more courage to go, oh, cool. These artists came before me, they had their insight, they had their way of thinking, and they doubled down on their thinking, and they sustained that thinking. This takes us to Module 4. the exploration and critical making through sensory-driven mark making exercises. So in short, it's about mark making. And why are we talking about this topic of mark making? It seems very basic, isn't it? And in my 16 years of teaching experience, I constantly go back to this idea of mark making, because it's not just about making interesting and random marks, but it's about play and openness. It's about thinking about possibilities and trying them out. And that way, you have the arsenal of tools that are ready to be deployed. And it may all be from one tool, or it may be from a couple of tools. But imagine that you have charcoal, you have pencil, you have maybe a fine liner, a water brush. If each tool you understand what are the many, many different ways for you to utilize it, then it opens up a lot more possibilities. It's definitely one of my favorite exercises to teach students. I like to teach them this idea. It's like learning a new language. When you learn a new language, you're most likely going to start with the alphabets and the vocabulary before you learn grammar, syntax, and flow. This is the same thing. You want to learn how the tool behaves, how it works, so that once you begin understanding that, you can actually apply it more thoroughly and feel like you're in a better control of the medium to get it to do what you want it to do. So instead of you being controlled by it, by the medium, you're actually flipping the script and you're controlling the medium. And if you were to look at, the many mediums that I've used, especially in the very beginning, and also the way that I hold, the graphite pencil, fine liner may be a little bit more limiting, right? But the way that I hold graphite pencil and some of the other mediums, I very much think about it as if it's an extension of my hand. And if you're asking, well, why do I do this? Why do I want to do this as an artist, right? Aside from learning the language of a new tool, the other thing too that is very, very interesting is when you think about the tool, it doesn't actually have to be a drawing utensil, a normal drawing utensil. You could pick up a spoon, you could pick up a stick, a twig, a branch. You could pick up any random thing. And if you're again asking the why, I would ask you, why not? Why not try it that way? Why not open yourself up to different ways of expression, different ways of making, and new meaning will come from that. It's about this idea of engagement with play. So what is Module 4 about? You try to prepare and experiment with various tools and then find of these different tools. You don't have to use it all. Of all these different tools, the methods that you tried out, the marks that you tried out, you will then learn, oh, okay, these feel great. Then you are going to apply these things that you learned to go on to Module 5, which are the actual drawing and painting exercises. So you can then translate these sensory experiences into more intentional artistic expressions. Essentially, you are putting yourself in the driver's seat and you're way more in control of the outcome. Not saying that you always need to be in control, but I always like to think of it as it's not chaos that we're engaging with, it's this beautiful, controlled chaos. And if you're not engaging with this controlled chaos, then you can't learn from happy accidents. Happy accidents just won't happen. So learn to let go of control is all that I want you to do for Module 4. Now we move on to Module number 5. All of our courses are designed in a way that gives you bite-sized pieces of information. I do my very, very best to do that so that you do feel like the new skills that you want to learn, they're attainable, but they're not crazy hard that it's impossible. But Module 5 is definitely where we're putting the things that we've learned to practice. And we still engage with it with a lot of fear, and rightfully so. Even when I painted out these 2-3 exercises, I still do have fear. But what you'll realize is, as long as you sustain it, you're going to take it through these different stages of excitement, then to anxiety, of great fear, feeling very dejected, and then you push through that to get another wave of excitement. Maybe it's dopamine to go, oh, this is promising, this is potentially amazing. So it's this ebb and flow, right? You experience highs and lows continuously in the production of your work. And aside from looking at fear and going, you know what, that's okay, I accept it, and moving through it, not moving around it, but moving through it, I really hope you can see from the two videos where I was drawing in the studio, and the other one of drawing the forest, painting in the forest, that I've really made a point to be in one with the spaces. So in both exercises, I mentioned how important it is for you to spend as long as you can, preferably between 15 to 30 minutes, not drawing. Don't rush into the drawing, and just experience. Put away your phone, remove all the distractions, and experience the space. Get to learn it, get to know it, engage in a conversation with it, have a dialogue with it. Listen, close your eyes, try to use various senses. And I remember, maybe it wasn't on the video, but I remember actually not just lying down. It was raining that day for the forest painting, which at the same time, I loved because it made that experience so much more visceral, right? Like really listening to the raindrops. And there's something so soothing and calming about it, but on the other side of it, I felt, oh, this is wonderful. The raindrops are coming down and interacting with my painting. But that was definitely an unforeseen circumstance where I still do think that the end result, I have to engage with my vulnerability to put it out there to show you guys honestly what it is that I had created at the end of that day. But objectively, I'm not happy with that painting. However, the great takeaway is I stayed true to that moment. And I think the mishap that day was the rain droplets came down and I was going, oh my God, nature is interacting with my artwork. And there are these beautiful marks that it created. And I was like, okay, great. I'm going to move on to something else. And then 10, 15 seconds later, because I was using watercolor paper, it just started to ooze out. So it's definitely a very chaotic experience, but I definitely learned a lot from that experience too. So the main thing that I want you to do is to try your very, very best to remove all distractions and engage in a conversation, engage in the practice of not just looking, but seeing. Engage in that practice so you can do your best to get into that flow state. It's about that transition. Julie Mertu talked about this in one of the videos that we linked. She talked about how there's that experience of going into the studio and sometimes just staring at the work that she had done the previous day and not making a mark. And I can only assume how often she does that. And I love that part about the artistic practice, that we don't always need to rush into doing the work. You'll see in this video that it's not, my hands aren't moving all the time. Sometimes there are pauses where I step back to assess, to look at my drawing and what's going on, and critique myself and engage in this journey of reflection. And the other idea that I like to add here is, if you think about performers like athletes, or it's a performer who's going to an open mic, they don't just show up and just do their thing, right? There's this wonderful process of preparing, the preparation, that there's a warm-up, they would stretch, they would engage in all these pre-game routines before the game actually starts. And so this is very much the same thing, that we're respecting our practice by giving it some time, to giving us some time, not even it, to giving us some time to remove ourselves from the craziness of our world, to put ourselves into the state of creativity, to put on our lenses as artists, and to put on our caps as creators to begin transitioning into our work. So to wrap up, drawing is a personal journey, and it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be difficult. I do understand how difficult things get. It does get difficult for me too. But when things get hard and difficult, let's learn to apply this concept. Let's pivot. Let's learn to draw with joy, and let's learn to draw and express your way. And these ideas of sight, touch, taste, and sound and smell, I hope we really don't take these senses at face value. I'm more talking about visualizing and capturing these environments with heightened sensitivity. And sometimes if this means that you're drawing from memory, and sometimes if this means that you're drawing from abstraction, from a very abstract place in your heart, it's very scary, but that's when you move from copying to creating. And it's truly exciting when you start to experience art creation this way. Now, it's your turn to give it a try. It will be scary, but reach out to us and join our Discord server. We started this project a year and a half ago, and it's been a long journey, and I can't wait to hear from you. I will give you all of my attention and do my very, very best to respond to each one of your messages and try to help you in your art journeys. Remember, you are not alone in this artistic journey. Join the community, because I know how lonely it feels if you're to create in a bubble, because I've been there, I've done that. I would love to see what you come up with. And if you found some value from this course, it would really mean the world to me if you can share it with a friend who you think would benefit from this course as well. I hope you found a bit more of what it is that you're looking for through these courses and through this course in particular. That you may be working a 9-to-5 job, that you may be on the grind, you may be looking for more meaning in life. And I really hope that these exercises begin to empower you, to give you the tools to demystify the whole art creation process and bring you the energy and balance in your life. Be kind, be bold, be you. I'm so proud of you, and you should be so proud of you for getting to this stage of the course, to completing it. Hats off to you, and I look forward to chatting and communicating and messaging you. Stay tuned for our YouTube channel for more content, free content coming your way. But of course, we're working very hard to produce other courses that I know would be of interest to you. Currently, we're working on the sketchbook course that I know 100,000% is the thing that you're looking for. I am tremendously excited for it, and see you around. Show out.